All right, let's dive into a piece of hardware that has, in many ways, become an unsung hero in the preparedness community. There it was, sitting under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, looking less like a serious tool and more like an old field manual you'd find tucked away in a dusty surplus store, the Ruger 1022. Lightweight, sporting a timeless hardwood stock, and chambered in .22 long rifle, it seemed better suited for a Boy Scout jamboree than for the hands of a serious survivalist. For years, this rifle was largely overlooked, unless someone was teaching a youngster the fundamentals of marksmanship or just plinking cans for an afternoon of fun. It was too quiet, too unassuming, and frankly, too old-fashioned. But then, something began to shift. It wasn't a flashy marketing campaign or a high-profile influencer that did it. It happened slowly, methodically. One preparedness-minded individual picked one up, then another. Soon, folks were buying them by the half dozen. All of a sudden, this once-neglected plinker was nowhere to be found. This is the story of how a modest, dependable rimfire rifle earned its place in serious prepping circles, not through showmanship, but through sheer, unadulterated utility. The Ruger 1022 first saw the light of day back in 1964. Since that quiet debut, it has become one of the most widely owned rimfire rifles ever produced. You'll find them tucked away in closets, barns, and gun cabinets, often handed down like a well-worn pair of work boots. Trusted, yes. Revered, not so much. It was dependable, but it was rarely seen as serious. For most, it was a stepping stone, the rifle you got after the Red Ryder, but before you stepped up to a proper centerfire like the AR-15. It was the awkward middle child of the firearms world. Meanwhile, the market was flooded with loud, aggressive platforms. Flat, dark earth finishes, quad rails, and magnum calibers were all the rage. Against all that noise, the 1022 looked almost quaint. A wooden stock and a rotary magazine didn't exactly turn heads at the local gun range. If you were looking for intimidation factor, you looked elsewhere. I certainly did. Years ago, I remember holding one and thinking it felt more like a toy than a tool. It had barely any kick, the muzzle report was mild, and it just didn't feel serious. So, I mentally shelved it. Not completely forgotten, but dismissed. No one was flexing with a 1022 on social media. And yet, it was quietly biding its time. Between the years 2020 and 2025, the firearms landscape changed in ways nobody saw coming. Ammunition that was once cheap and plentiful became scarce. Even go-to calibers like 9mm and 5.56 skyrocketed in price and vanished from store shelves. Gun owners, especially those with families to support or small groups to train, felt the squeeze. Suddenly, it wasn't just about owning a firearm. It was about being able to feed it, train with it consistently, and stay financially solvent. That's when people began to give the Ruger 1022 a second look. A box of .22 long rifles still cost less than a fast food combo meal, even during the worst of the panic buying. You could get 500 rounds for what you'd pay for 2 magazines worth of AR-15 ammo. And the rifle itself? While centerfire platforms were climbing north of $800 or even $1,200, you could still find a 1022 for under $300 in most shops. That mattered. And preppers took note. At a small gun swap in rural Idaho in early 2025, one man stood out, not because of his tactical gear or custom builds, but because of what he had quietly set down on his table. 5 Ruger 1022s, neatly packed in a storage bin. Each one was clean, zeroed, and labeled by name. No red dots, no fancy lights, just solid, ready-to-use rifles. When someone asked why he'd invested in 5 rimfire rifles instead of a couple of high-powered battle rifles, his response was simple. I don't need better. I need everyone to be capable. That sentiment perfectly captured a growing shift in mindset. It wasn't just about having the most firepower anymore. It was about building resilience into a group. It was about arming friends, family, and neighbors with something they could operate safely and effectively. The rifles in that crate weren't just tools. They were a strategy. Calling the Ruger 1022 practical barely scratches the surface. It's more like the Swiss Army knife of prepping firearms. Lightweight, low maintenance, and incredibly cost-effective. But its strength isn't just in its budget-friendly nature. It's about how many problems it solves at once. A standard 1022 weighs just over 5 pounds. That's lighter than a stripped-down Kalashnikov and nearly half the weight of a fully tricked-out battle rifle. When you're hiking for miles, every ounce counts. This is a gun that won't wear out a kid or an older adult. Then there's the ammunition. The .22 long rifle round doesn't scream tactical, but from a logistical standpoint, it's brilliant. 1,000 rounds can fit in a shoebox and weigh less than a full canteen. You can stockpile enough ammunition to last through long-term scenarios without breaking the bank or drawing unwanted attention. It's also quiet, naturally low in decibels, and easily suppressed to sub-audible levels. That makes it ideal for taking small game, handling defensive tasks with discretion, or signaling in a grid-down world. And if you miss, you're not lighting up the entire county with muzzle flash and thunder. People overthink survival. They chase the next cool thing, the most Instagrammable piece of gear. But the folks who are planning for real-world scenarios, for ongoing training and long-term adaptability, they keep coming back to the 1022. Not because it's glamorous, but because it works. It buys you time, space, and flexibility. 3 things you can't afford to lose when it really counts. And that's the kind of quiet genius that most people never notice, until it's too late. At first glance, the Ruger 1022 might seem basic, even bare bones. But beneath that no-frills exterior lies one of the most flexible rimfire rifle systems ever developed. If the AR-15 is the prom queen of modern rifles, then the 1022 is her introverted cousin who's handy with tools and owns a garage full of upgrades. Nearly every part of this rifle, the barrel, the stock, the trigger group, the bolt, the optics, can be swapped out or customized. Want to transform it into a takedown hiking rifle? No problem. Need a quiet solution for varmint control with a suppressor? Done. From precision builds to tactical setups with drum mags and folding stocks. There's a version of this rifle for every mission you can think of, and several you haven't. This level of adaptability isn't just for hobbyists tinkering on their workbench. For those of us thinking long-term, it's a blueprint for resilience. In a world where replacement parts might vanish or logistics fall apart, having a rifle that can be reconfigured using common components is invaluable. One rifle that can play 10 different roles is far more useful than 10 rifles for 10 different tasks. Many shooters I know have dedicated 1022s for very specific uses. One tuned for suppressed use, another set up for training, one optimized for small game, and one packed away in a truck kit. That's not being excessive. That's building smart redundancy. And the real beauty of it? The hands-on experience you get from customizing it to your liking. The 1022 encourages that kind of mechanical curiosity. It's one of the few rifles that rewards both the shooter and the tinkerer in equal measure. For a long time, the Ruger 1022 didn't get much respect in serious gun circles. It didn't kick hard, it didn't make a lot of noise, and it certainly didn't come loaded with mall ninja aesthetics. To some folks, that meant it wasn't a serious firearm. Many dismissed the .22 long rifle cartridge outright. Too soft, not enough punch, and prone to ricocheting off hard surfaces. But that attitude ignores context, and context matters more than caliber. Not every situation calls for brute force. Sometimes discretion is the objective. Feeding your family for a week with minimal noise, minimal expense, and zero unwanted attention. That's where the 1022 shines. It doesn't try to dominate, it just performs. It can quietly drop a rabbit at 40 yards, teach a total beginner how to handle a firearm, or stop a threat in close quarters without waking up the entire neighborhood. People laugh at the idea of a rimfire for survival, until ammunition costs skyrocket and recoil sensitivity becomes a real barrier to training. In those conditions, having a rifle that anyone can use, maintain, and afford to feed becomes more of a strength than a compromise. Those who scoff often haven't had to rely on a rifle under real stress. When resources matter more than firepower, that humble .22 starts looking a lot more like a tool and a lot less like a toy. In the preparedness world, gear earns its place through performance, not advertising. And the Ruger 1022 has been proving its worth consistently from around 2022 onward. It wasn't flashy marketing that put it in prepper kits. It was practicality. Folks started noticing how well it filled key roles, affordable to maintain, reliable under pressure, and easy to replace without any drama. By early 2025, I saw the tone of online discussions begin to shift. It wasn't just about how to trick out your AR anymore. It was about outfitting an entire household, affordably and effectively. I read a post from a guy in Central Texas who had laid out 6 1022s for his family. Each one had a red dot, a sling, a basic cleaning kit, and 2,000 rounds of ammunition in labeled cans. He wasn't flexing, he was demonstrating a working system. Another prepper group outside of Spokane ran their weekend drills exclusively with 1022s. Their logic was airtight: low recoil, cheap training, and zero wasted ammo. Their goal wasn't raw firepower, it was teamwork and repeatability. When you see the same rifle consistently showing up in trucks, storage bins, and bug-out kits, you know people are making decisions based on utility, not just looks. To someone new to preparedness, the idea of buying 10 of the same rifle might seem crazy. But that's because they're thinking like a consumer, not a planner. In long-term disruption scenarios, you don't just need one high-end rifle, you need a system that can be replicated, taught, and maintained. That's where the Ruger 1022 fits in better than most. Cost is only part of the equation. The real win here is consistency. When everyone in your group is running the same platform, everything becomes easier. Training, parts replacement, shared magazines, and common troubleshooting. One team in rural Kentucky started collecting 1022s in early 2024. By the following summer, they had standardized kits for 12 people: rifles, cleaning gear, suppressors, and matching slings. In a real emergency, what matters most is what works under pressure. When your adrenaline is pumping, your fine motor skills drop off fast. That's when consistency becomes invaluable. And the 1022 offers that in spades. So, no, it's not just about owning more guns. It's about having a platform that can scale without introducing chaos. In the prepping community, real value is measured in performance over time. That's why the Ruger 1022 keeps punching above its weight. Not because of flashy ballistics, but because it just works. I read a post on Reddit where a guy said he skipped buying a $1,000 rifle because he couldn't afford to feed it. Instead, he stocked up on bulk .22 long rifle, extra magazines, and invested in food and first aid. That choice might not turn heads, but it's sustainable. Another huge benefit is training. A 1022 doesn't intimidate new shooters. Whether it's your spouse, your kid, or your neighbor, they can all get comfortable with it quickly. There's no loud bang or punishing recoil to deal with. In high-stress moments, that confidence boost is priceless. One prepper posted a photo of his full setup. 6 1022s, all with optics and ammo cans sorted by shooter. No confusion, no overlap, just readiness that can scale. That's what makes the 1022 so special. It's not a collector's item. It's a tool that works for anyone, anywhere, without a lot of hand-holding. And when things go sideways, that's exactly what you need. The Ruger 1022 never chased the spotlight. It earned its place quietly, through reliability, utility, and consistent results. It doesn't win beauty contests, but it wins where it counts, in the real world. When things fall apart, and simplicity, mobility, and adaptability matter more than flash, the 1022 keeps showing up in the right hands, doing what it has always done, dependably, affordably, and without fail. If you've got your own story or setup involving the 1022, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what mods you've made, what roles it fills in your kit, or how it's worked for you over time. And if this breakdown gave you something to think about, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. I've got more deep dives coming your way. Gear that's been proven, plans that hold up, and honest insights from the field. Stay sharp, stay ready, and I'll catch you in the next one.